Yeah, but the other piece of news I wanted to get to that's definitely underreported that I saw that you and I were going back and forth about just texting because and for the listeners, we don't just like shoot from the hip on this show. I mean, we try to our prep is really us just like texting each other what we're seeing and trying to like read up on this type of stuff. But yeah, this was definitely underreported. And actually, if it wasn't for Twitter, I wouldn't even know about this article because it got kind of buried. I mean, I was trying to find other headlines about it, and this was like buried at the bottom of something on Real Clear Politics. Yeah. Oh no, Politico. Politico. It was buried at the bottom of that, but it was all over Twitter, and that's where I tend to get a lot of news. So, DHS is standing up a new disinformation governance board to coordinate countering misinformation related to Homeland Security, focused specifically on irregular migration in Russia. Nina Jankowicz will head the board as executive director. She previously was a disinformation fellow at the Wilson Center, advised the Ukrainian Foreign Ministry as part of the Fulbright Public Policy Fellowship, and oversaw Russia and Belarus programs at the National Democratic Institute. And then it says hat tip to Daniel Lippman for that. But I think you and I had the same reaction that just want to hear DHS Disinformation Governance Board. It sounds very North Korea-esque because I do think I think disinformation is a problem, but this is not the way that you fight that.
No, and to have this is a board that's supposed to instill ethics back into the way we get information, back into the media, back into social media, back in the news, and the government's going to run it. Our government, which is probably one of the most unethical, lack of integrity organization out there. Holy crap. Are you kidding me? And is it a shock that they're putting that out as Elon Musk gets Twitter? Are you kidding? So they can control the flow of information. All you veterans out there that have served in the Middle East or served in North Africa, that have served in countries with dictators or with terrorists that run the country, you know what this is. This is the ability to control and put out propaganda. And now it's by our government agency, It's the same thing a dictator would do. What did I shot you that meme of this is Kim Jong-il approved. Yeah, this sort of thing.
Kim Jong-un.
Kim Jong-un approved. Well, that's because that's what this is. The government does not need to be doing any of this. And putting in a disinformation governance board by our own government that puts out more disinformation, utilizing the mainstream media, that's the most hypocritical thing. It's laughable. It's ludicrous. It really is. And it's extremely hypocritical. And I think a lot of Americans, just like myself and like you, can look at it right now because we've been disinformed quite often enough by our own government and the mainstream media that we look at it and just have the same feeling that both of us do. It's like, are you kidding me? You guys are going to say what's going to be out there? No, you're going to say what you want people to hear so your own political party can stay in power. And if it was a Republican-led government that was doing the same thing right now, or a Republican-led White House, I would be saying the same thing. It's like, no, stay out of it. You don't need to have anything to do with it. Politicians are not ethical. My own experience with politicians, the media has ethical people, but overall is not ethical. It's not have integrity on either side of the house. Ian, Ian and I talk about that quite often as well. Stay out of it. They're the disinformation board. That's ridiculous. And I just don't think it's a coincidence that it came about after Elon Musk bought Twitter and the whole left freaked out. Hey, what it is.
I don't know because of the fact that I will say Elon Musk just bought Twitter. I think it would probably take a few months at least to put this into effect. I don't think they just created a position overnight, if I had to guess.
Well, I think they've been watching this like everybody else. They're watching, and you do have contingencies. If this happens, then this is the route we're going to go. And that's how the military works. That is how the government works, at least on that aspect, is they normally don't shoot from the hip in most cases. But sometimes even all their contingencies are completely way off. Like Benghazi is a perfect example. The contingency, what should we say? Well, they had multiple contingencies and they picked one that was ridiculous. Well, here's disinformation right there.
And that's the thing. Yeah, that's a great example because they would say that your story of someone who was actually there was disinformation. But you know what? I guess be fair on this issue, and we were both texting about it. I do think there is a major problem with both Russian disinformation out there and Chinese disinformation, and you have to counter those. And they do it brilliantly, truthfully. I mean, China with TikTok is Chinese disinformation. They control the algorithm. The Communist Party of China controls what you see on there, and it's an app that is basically people dancing, is masquerading as like the fun part of being on it, but the app is 100% designed to put out Chinese propaganda. And then Russia, on the other hand, with RT, they've done a brilliant job of basically pitting Americans against each other. If you listen to our episode way back with I hate having to say his code name, but Coriolanus. You know, I want to say his real name, but you know, he just doesn't put it out there. But you know, he spoke about we spoke about it at the time. Russia buying ads for Trump, Russia buying Facebook ads for even Black Lives Matter, and as Coriolanus said, were they doing it because they really support these causes? No, it was to create hostility. And they're sitting back and watching all of this. So I do think America has to counter that in some way, but you don't counter it by kind of doing the same thing. Actually, I would say Russia is a lot more. They're good at like kind of like RT. They're good at making it look like a genuine news source. They bring tons of American guests on there. People we've been on the show.
Hey guys, full disclosure, I've been on the show before. I've been on twice now. They said exactly what I said, and it wasn't spun, it wasn't changed, and I made sure of that. And then I stopped going on all media. It was right at that time frame.
Yeah, but I mean, they're very good at making RT look like a real news source. Like you know, and RT is just it's the you know Putin wing of it's just whatever Putin wants out there.
But I do see Americans. We do when we're individuals, when we're by ourselves, we have a lot of common sense. It's when we get in large groups that we lose our freaking mind. I don't see RT as prevalent as maybe you have in the Midwest. It's not out here. We don't. No,
but that's the thing. I don't think people are watching it, but people are sharing articles. I mean, you've seen, as I was texting you, right? You've probably seen, because they're everywhere, the photos and videos of Ukrainian soldiers tying Russians to posts, or the amount of Nazis who are in the Ukrainian military, right? What? And they're saying, oh, they're fighting Nazis over there. We're denazifying Ukraine. Yeah, this is the same as that you could have an incident of some white supremacist who's in the U.S. Army and say the U.S. Army is all white supremacists. They're not necessarily watching RT. They're getting RT talking points from other sources. Tucker Carlson has repeated a lot of RT talking points.
I think our own media divides us enough that we don't need RT doing it.
But that's the point. They've made it worse.
Well, that's the thing. I see the common sense, just like yourself, with people. Wars, hell, and wars. This is, hey guys, whether it's Russia or Ukraine, the reason you have wars is both people think they're right. That's why. All right. So this is what you're seeing. One side is thinking they're right, and here they're giving the reasons. And we're going to see the Ukrainian side. They think they're right. And this is given the reasons. War's hell, brother. War's hell. And to say that Ukrainian soldiers aren't doing atrocities to Russian soldiers would be for horseshit. They are. They're doing, not all of it, but you lose your mind.
But I'm saying it's being these isolated incidents are being utilized to spin a narrative that Russia are the good guys, and Russia are not the good guys.
Well, but I know, but neither is Ukraine. And are they innocent to all this? Ukraine's one of the, and guys, that's why I say we don't need to be involved in this. This is their regional war. These guys have it out. I don't think Russia. You think I like Russia? You guys know better than that.
Yeah.
I just don't. I'm trying, because you have to stay in the middle of a road with this. For me, I believe you do. Because both sides. Yes, Ukraine was invaded. Could have been avoided, probably. But now they're fighting, and the longer it goes out, you're going to see more atrocities by both sides, because they've had it, and we're humans. We see our friend killed. If you're a Ukrainian soldier and you see me, let's give an example. Me and you are Ukrainians. We're out there fighting. You die. I'm holding you in my arms when you die. Do you not think I'm not going to turn into a freaking bloodlust and I'm going to cut everybody's dick off Russian shoulder? That I'm going to, and it might get caught on camera. And now I am this terrible, terrible person because I don't take prisoners anymore. But you got to remember what goes on in somebody's head. And that's where, that's where I see that we're going to have more opportunities from both sides to point out atrocities when both sides are at fault for those atrocities. And I think that's why you see Dutch You see Maddie, Sergeant Waters, myself. Who else do we have on? Justin, Navy SEAL, say, hey, we don't need to be a part of any of this.
And we all agree. Yeah. But I also want to make it clear, Putin is, a war criminal. I do agree.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that we're definitely we're being sold by, I think, the establishment to get into a war. But I have no problem with the amount of people who have gone over from here, who have volunteered with the Ukrainian forces because they strongly believe in it. Just like the same way we have people who have, former Marines. I know, I'm sure way more people, who went to volunteer with the Peshmerga. I personally do agree with the those people who are over there doing that. But my point is, because we're getting a little off topic from it, but my point is, like, I don't think RT's propaganda is so prevalent that it's people turning on the TV and watching RT. It's people sharing articles. And once you look into where's this source from, source from, it all goes back to Putin, and Putin all goes back to RT. That's his wing of the media.
And that's what Russia and China, that's what we do. We do the same thing.
I don't want to say we're on the same level, though. I really don't. I don't think you could really compare what we do to RT. RT is very slick with what they do.
I think we do push out. It's unconventional warfare. It's to change hearts and minds, and that's how to destroy the morale of the people or to uplift the morale of the people. If you're on that side, that's war. But that's unconventional warfare. That's UW. You learn that. There's a whole book on that. If you want a whole training manual or field manual on that, if you want to look it up from the special forces teams, UW, unconventional warfare, hearts and minds, Would I say, do we have an RT? I don't watch the news enough to
we don't. I mean, I do agree there's a ton of propaganda on the news, but we don't have like a Biden news network, which is what RT is.
And God bless we don't. I'm glad we don't have one of those. And
then also, I'll point out one more thing, because I'm going to mention like the Top Gun movie, for example. And I really want to get someone on from the Top Gun movie, but I'm thinking of this as an example, right? We talked about it with Alex Hollings. Tom Cruise, right, in the new Top Gun movie. There's a reason he doesn't have a Taiwan patch on his jacket anymore. China's able to say to us, we're not going to distribute your film if you put anything that's pro-Taiwan. So, they're just very good at propaganda. They're very good at it, and I think they're very good at solely getting their message out there. And I don't think you can compare the two when China, for example, is they don't have Twitter, they don't have social media, they don't have ways to get these other voices out there. And then in terms of Russia is not even hearing the Ukrainian perspective on what's going on. Russia literally believes that they're denazifying Ukraine, and that's just not true.
Well, like I said, wars are started because both sides think they're right. That's why wars
for sure. But I just don't think you can compare U.S. propaganda, which is prevalent, to Russia or Chinese propaganda. And that's my take.
We use our propaganda against ourselves to do. It's a full circle, and it's just where we come back to, I say, common sense. Americans as an individual have common sense. It's when we get into our groups that we lose our fucking minds and we lose all common sense. So on Ian's point of RT or the Russian propaganda or Chinese, which are out there. Look at Disney. Holy shit. The Simpsons, they've changed episode because the Chinese were unhappy.
Yes.
Do you see how many, and some of them, not taking any away from the movies that come up, but have you seen a lot of the new movies that are coming out on Disney? They're Chinese, turning red Chinese. You've got Shang-Chi, Chinese, all showing the good side, the values of China, and do you think that's a coincidence? No, that's the propaganda. It's the hearts and minds, same thing. And hey, my son loves red. He loves watching. He's 6 years old. He loves it. I don't think he's getting whatever. We'll get into that later. I don't need to get into that now. But what I'm saying is that there always will be propaganda out there. We have to use our common sense. And we use propaganda against our enemies. Part of that going into internet cafes and putting shit in computers. So when a local pulls it up, we can track them, first of all, if we're trying to find somebody, but also there's propaganda going into those computers at internet cafes. Been part of those operations before. It's just something that is going to be there because it's how you try to win a war without having to fight a war or destroy the morale of troops. And on Ukraine and Russia, Putin's terrible. He's crazy. He's a megalomaniac. You got to worry about him pushing the button. That's why we always also say don't have any troops against troops. Don't put any U.S. troops or U.S. no-fly zone, because all Putin has to do is push a button, and he would, because he's not going to beat us in a head-on war. It's not going to happen. We saw that when he ran out of gas driving from Georgia to Texas with with his freaking fleet. But to say that the Ukrainians are completely innocent to this, the military and so forth, I would say that's wrong as well. But they did get invaded, so it's like, well, you started it? Well, I don't know. They've been fighting for 10 years on the eastern side of Ukraine. Who really started it? It doesn't matter. All right, just use your common sense. Help out where you can. And I agree with you, guys that want to fight over there, Ian. Have at it, guys. Go do what you think. You think you're doing something well. I felt that a long time ago as well, where I was fighting for something bigger than myself. God bless y'all. Be safe. Do what you have to do. Then get home. But in the meantime, to me, it's a double-edged sword. I don't know who's right at the moment. All I know is that the people in Ukraine, and it's always the people in the countries, they're the ones that actually take the brunt of it and suffer. Both sides in this war, up on the mainframe and the Ukraine-Russian war, are both thinking they're right. And it's just going to keep getting worse and worse as it drags on, because individuals in combat, when they see atrocities or they see their friends killed, it just makes them more jaded, and it makes things easier to do. I'll use an example. Look at Eddie Gallagher. Guys, I know some of you hate me for saying that, but you listen to our whole show. I think there were atrocities there too, but because of things that happen while you're there to you, and you just become jaded. So just use your common sense as an individual. Don't get in that group think echo chamber with everybody around you. Just use your freaking common sense, and just don't follow RT anymore.
But I don't, once again, I don't think they do. I think RT is very slick with how they get things out there. I don't think people here's the last point I actually wanted to make in terms of that is no one thinks they're ever a victim of disinformation, but we've all spread disinformation at one point or another. We've all read something that was disinformation and didn't know it. And we all, I do always feel like it's the baby boomer generation who is the worst with it. I think it's because they probably didn't grow up with computers and all that, and they don't cross-reference things. They just see an article, they take it as fact. If it sides with whatever viewpoint they have, they'll put it out there. And you got to cross-reference the misinformation or any information out there because of the fact that it's very prevalent. Does the government need to set up a department of DHS to combat that? Absolutely not. And also, we do know the DHS, which was started by Bush, by the way, does just go after people for political reasons. Under Bush, they were going after like anti-war protesters. Yeah. And then under Obama, you had Janet Napolitano, if you remember, she was going after veterans. She was going after anti-abortion activists, going after Ron Paul supporters, going after libertarians, anyone with a Gadsden flag. They were all potential terrorists. And DHS is a very bad track record. It's something that should have never been started, I think.
So just turn everything off. Be like me. Be unplugged and get.
Well, I think you should read the news. I mean, I think you should read the